Welcome everyone to our briefing today on the public comment period for the National Guideline Standards for Tutor Apprenticeship Programs. Today we're going to be focused on the draft that will be opening shortly for public comment. I'm Kate Cochran. I'm with the Partnership for Student Success, and I'm joined here by with my colleagues, Jen Lopiccolo from the Partnership for Student Success, Catherine Bassett from the New Jersey Tutoring Corps, Ashley Benkin from the New Jersey Tutoring Corps, Kathy Bentheim from the National Student Support Accelerator, and Sabrina Baptiste from Innovate EDU and the Pathways Alliance. So we are going to, I promise we'll be brief today. A little bit of an overview of our agenda. We're going to talk a bit about what are national guideline standards for apprenticeships. We're going to provide a little bit of background on these national guideline standards for tutor apprenticeship programs specifically to provide some background for our network of what is this that we're doing. We'll provide some framing on what to expect from the draft tutor national guideline standards that we'll be releasing for public comment hopefully later this week. We'll talk a little bit about additional resources beyond these standards that our working group and others are contemplating to support implementation of these types of programs, provide some guidance on how to provide feedback on this draft for those of you who are new to apprenticeships, and then we'll share a little bit about the timeline. We will not have time for Q&A today, but please feel free to add things to the chat. I will be going through at the end and make sure that if there are questions, and leave your email. Oh, I think I have everyone's email from the registration, but if you add something to the chat, I'll follow up with you after this call. You can also feel free to reach out to me via email. I'll put my email in the chat toward the end of this call and encourage people to reach out. So with that, I will dive in. Oh, I just talked about the agenda. So what are national guideline standards for apprenticeships? I promise not every slide has this much text, and I'm going to thank Sabrina at the Pathways Alliance for writing this. So national guideline standards for apprenticeships are templates of high quality apprenticeship program standards that are used by organizations that aim to establish apprenticeship program guidelines and templates for use by their local affiliates within the national apprenticeship system. They can be used for any occupation that is national in scope and recognized by the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship as apprenticeable. Tutoring is one of those recognized professions. And they provide nationally certified but locally registered frameworks for occupational standards while preserving programmatic flexibility to account for local needs or requirements. So they are guidelines that can be customized based on the local context. Local affiliates or sponsoring employers who adopt a set of national guideline standards can implement those program standards without modification in registering the program at the state or the local level, or they can customize them. And national guideline standards for apprenticeships have a proven track record of success in various industries outside of education, but also beyond education. And so by providing qualified apprenticeship sponsors with a nationally centered or nationally certified standards template that can be tailored to fit their program specific objectives. The standards allow programs across the country to kind of have a benchmark for implementing quality programs. And they're crucial in creating and maintaining high quality apprenticeship programs while also maintaining some flexibility for the local or programmatic context. And I'm going to put a link in the chat that shares that from the Pathways Alliance that just provides a little bit more context on national guideline standards if this is something new to you. So a little background on the national guideline standards for tutor apprenticeships, why we're here today. So as you may know, a working group led by the Partnership for Student Success and the New Jersey Tutoring Corps, and also including the National Student Support Accelerator and the Pathways Alliance, came together starting in April to develop a set of national guideline standards for tutor apprenticeship programs specifically. As more tutoring programs seek to diversify their funding sources, we know that there's a growing opportunity to tap into state workforce systems and apprenticeship funding resources that have historically not been leveraged for tutoring, though we know that many high-impact tutoring programs already have robust training and professional development systems and structures in place. So these national guideline standards will focus on positioning effective tutoring models as quality workforce aligned experiences that can align programs for apprenticeship funding, and also on the other side, support state and local workforce boards to accelerate approval for these types of programs in a way that meets nationally recognized standards of quality. We did not set out to create something brand new. We are really aligning these standards with existing research on what makes an effective tutor, and also building on the experience of Pathways Alliance and designing these types of standards for other education professions, building on the experience of the New Jersey Tutoring Corps in implementing the first registered tutoring apprenticeship, and the research and expertise of the National Student Support Accelerator on tutoring. This set of standards also proposes updates to the existing Department of Labor definition of the tutor profession, which is currently, you can look it up on apprenticeships.gov. It's currently more test prep centric than what we typically see in evidence-based tutoring programs. So we're going to be proposing some updates, which you'll be able to see to how we define, or to how the Department of Labor defines the profession of a tutor. And we see this as the first of several steps to support our coalition, to support the broader field, to align quality tutoring with quality workforce development efforts. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Benkin to share a little bit about what to actually expect from this document.
Thanks, Kate. And apologies, everyone. I was sharing with Kate earlier, a doctor's appointment ran over, so thanks for being flexible that I'm coming in from the car. So you're here today because, we wanted to make sure that the people that work closely with tutoring organizations across the country can participate in this process. We think it's really important to build on everything that Kate just said, that the standards reflect a wide range of what high quality programming will look like, which means at the end of the day, how are we training and supporting tutors to go work in any kind of tutoring program across the country? So we believe that some of those core values around how a tutor should be trained and supported are exactly what these guideline standards should be defining. So the way workforce language works is a program is going to apply individually, but as you approach creating or applying to become an approved program, you will have to complete these appendices to your application. And so when you look at what we are providing you to give you feedback on, those are some of the appendices that if you are a program provider, that you would have to be thinking through and providing on your own behalf, describing what you do to become your own apprenticeship program. So Appendix A is really the meat and potatoes of the whole document. It talks about how you will be approaching, how you train and support the tutors that work for your organization, what your grade range might be, the students that you're supporting. They could be post-secondary students, they could be preschool only, right? That is, you're explaining who the tutors will be supporting and how they're going about that. You'll be explaining how long that tutors work with you. Is this a 1 year, 2 year, 4 year kind of partnership that you have or employment that you have with them? And just note language that workforce uses, which I see some familiar faces on this call that you've already started to kind of crosswalk the differences between workforce and education. They work in the form of years, right? And so by standard, they think that every apprenticeship program is going to be at least 2 years. And we can talk offline, and that's the goal of the toolkits. But in general, you have to identify what is the distance that our program might run. And so that's what they want to understand as a term. The ratio of apprentice to journey workers is essentially how many of these newer tutors are working around others. Think of it kind of like alternate route and traditional route, kind of preparation. That's really where that language is going. The wage schedule is super important. And so to build on Kate's slide before, the guideline standards that we created have 3 different options, knowing that wages are very like locally driven often and or state driven based on specific policies or minimum requirements. So there's a kind of lower end minimum wage all the way up to a higher end minimum wage for tutors that you'll be able to see and review. This is intentional, right? We are not trying to put out guideline standards that has one required wage schedule for all tutor apprentices to complete. The probationary period is a lot of standard language that largely comes from what the Department of Labor expects, unless you have really strong opinions about a way that you go about a probationary period with your tutors. You know, a lot of that is boilerplate language that should likely stay the same. And then the work process. So this is where I think we're going to get most of the feedback and thoughts, and I hope we get most of the feedback and thoughts. The work process is labor terms to say, what are the lists of competencies that every tutor should be completing when we say this is a tutor apprentice and they've completed a registered apprenticeship program. So it is a very basic table, and that is intentional, driven and aligned by competencies that mirror strongly kind of the similar competencies in speaker work. So we intentionally made that happen because we believe that the tutor occupation can be a great on-ramp into the teaching occupation. And now that we have tutor apprenticeship programs, there's lots of opportunity to leverage tutor apprenticeship programs to be a precursor or a pre-apprenticeship program into teacher apprenticeship programs. If you're on this call and you're like, oh yeah, we already have an existing teacher apprenticeship program. So there's some of the background as to why we grounded it in some of the more traditional competencies for teachers. And then last but not least, selection procedures. So how are the guideline standards is outlining some basics around what should be those selection criteria for any tutor becoming an apprentice across the country. That being said, if you have very strong opinions about like a specific area or a grade band that a tutor should be qualified to work with, that it might be more reasonable in your program's application, because again, building on Kate's points, these are just some starter guidelines. If and when your organization looks to become an approved tutor apprenticeship program, you're able to customize that information to your benefit, so and to your local context, so how it sees fit for you. Appendix D, definition of a tutor. We had a fun and very confusing time trying to understand why we saw so many definitions of tutor on the Department of Labor website. We're hoping that this can streamline and improve the definition that's on there, but by no means do we have a timeline when any of that will actually be updated, but that is a goal of the guideline standards. And to be clear, we are defining a tutor. So a conversation that we had as a working group is we all come from this background of high impact tutoring, but what is the definition of a tutor that could work in any tutoring program and how important that is? Thanks, Kate. I'm glad you listed these out. I forgot we had this slide here. So here's the most important pieces to take away. As you're giving us your feedback and comments, we want to make sure that every tutor that completes a tutor apprenticeship program is becoming, high quality based on everything that you're seeing. And so that is exactly what bullet number 1 is talking about. Bullet number 2, I already said it, they're guidelines, right? When you go to apply and create your own, you get to customize your own. You'll see, and Kate did a great job of identifying where this is boilerplate language. Feel free to give us your feedback, but again, we aren't going to use it because it's coming from the Department of Labor. And then last but not least, the whole team is going to continue working with all the different experts that are out there. Many of you are included in that to make sure that, helpful information in the form of a toolkit can be available, because crosswalking education language and workforce language can be really challenging. So we're happy to help, and stay tuned because that's where that information would go. Anything else, Kate, that I can walk through, or questions? I just can't see if anybody dropped in questions.
I think that's perfect, Ashley. Thank you so much.
You got it.
And just one thing I want to double click on that Ashley shared is around these being the definition of a tutor being focused on the tutor and not the program. You will not see things in these national guideline standards around dosage, around in-school, out-of-school settings, things like that, because those are tied to the program, not the individual tutor. I say this in the space in the community of I know many high impact tutoring folks on this call. Just want to make sure that you understand why that information is not included there. It's because really this has to be focused on the individual, not the program. As Ashley mentioned, we are contemplating a number of different resources that will be implementation focused to support the field once these national guideline standards are done. So just to give you an idea of what we're contemplating right now, we are hoping to do an implementation toolkit, likely an accompanying webinar or webinars. Pathways Alliance is interested in potentially doing a webinar on understanding the basics of apprenticeship funding for education professions, basic information about what are allowable uses of funding, how do you apply for funding, what's the funding timeline, what types of grants are available, things like that. We will be doing some program spotlights on how apprenticeship funding can be used to support tutoring. This will be a growing list because we know New Jersey Tutoring Corps is we believe the first and only doing the tutoring profession through apprenticeship funding right now. And then if there's interest, we may consider doing a working group focused on tutor apprenticeships more broadly in the future. If we decide to do something like this, we anticipate that it would be something similar in structure to the Partnership for Student Success Federal Work Study Working Group. I know some folks on this call participate in that group, but really focused on creating a peer learning network of practitioners who are working to implement evidence-based student supports using a particular funding stream. We're early stages here. If this is something that's of interest to you, let us know. It's only something that we want to invest time in if there's interest and demand from our coalition and our broader networks. So how to provide feedback on the draft national guideline standards. So our public comment period will open very soon. We're finalizing a couple things from our first round of this kind of small group of reviewers, but our hope is to release this the draft for public comment on July 2nd. So in 2 days, and no matter what, it will be open for 3 weeks. So that would go through July 23rd. Look out for an email from the Partnership for Student Success announcing the opening of the public comment period. Everyone who's registered for this call will get that email, as will our broader network, and each of the members of the working group will also be sharing this with their networks as well. It'll provide a link to the draft and also provide a link to a Google form where you can provide public comment. And we encourage you to review the draft and answer the questions you see on my screen. What would you recommend improving about the draft? What is unclear? What is missing? And then beyond the national guideline standards, what type of implementation resources will be most useful to you or to your key stakeholders in thinking about or actually implementing a tutor apprenticeship program? We're also interested if, maybe you don't have ideas of specific resources that you're looking for, but what types of implementation challenges do you anticipate that you'd like us to think about in terms of the resources that we're offering beyond the national guideline standards? So it's 2 parts. One, really feedback on the standards. The second, feedback on what type of implementation supports would be helpful to you. And in terms of the timeline, as I said, the public comment period, as long as everything goes smoothly this week, should run from July 2nd through July 23rd. From July 24th through 30th, the working group will consider all the feedback that we receive and update the draft as needed. We plan to submit the national guideline standards to the U.S. Department of Labor on or around July 31st. And then once it's submitted and is there for their consideration, we will start working on development and publication, dissemination of those additional implementation focused resources that I mentioned, toolkit, webinars, etc. And that'll go through the late fall. It will take some time to roll out. We obviously do not control when the U.S. Department of Labor will approve these national guideline standards, but we are hopeful based on what we've seen in other similar situations. We're hopeful that they will be approved in early fall. And then pending Department of Labor approval, we are hosting, well, no matter what, we're hosting a PSS summit on October 6th. And if the national guideline standards have a Department of Labor approval by that time, we may host a launch event either at the summit or the next day. So keep your eyes open for that if it's something that interests you, whether it's an announcement or an in-person event. So that concludes our briefing. I encourage you to reach out to me, reach out to Ashley. I will put both of our emails in the chat now if you have any questions. Also feel free to put questions in the chat. We don't have time for Q&A today, but I'm going to note these and I'll reach back via email. And then, sorry, Danielle, I see your question here. We are not proposing an age restriction on the national guideline standards, but are open to feedback. If people feel strongly there should be an age restriction and have a good argument for that, please do let us know during the public comment period. The reason that we have not proposed an age limit is because we do not want, we can envision in theory, maybe there's a student who graduates from high school at 17 and there's, and is applying to an evidence-based apprenticeship program. We don't want to suggest that they be limited from applying for this type of program. But we are very open to feedback here. So with that, that is it. I really appreciate everyone joining us today and really look forward to hearing your feedback both on the draft and on the implementation focused resources. Please reach out if you have questions or wonderings, things you'd like to discuss related to this topic. We're really excited about this moving forward and to have so many people interested. Have a great rest of your day.